For Inside Carolina, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and this is Up in the Rafters, where I'm joined by my guy, Carolina basketball legend and 2017 national champion, Justin Jackson of the Boston Celtics. Justin, the hype around UNC is off the charts right now, to be expected when you're the preseason number one. You open up the year Monday with a 69-56 win over UNC Wilmington. Maybe not as dominant as fans might have expected, but what were your biggest takeaways watching that game?
Um, I think that honestly is one of the biggest ones. I mean, I think, fans might be upset or whatever after or not impressed after the first game, but it's the first game of a long season, just coming off of a season of, making it all the way to the championship game. And so I think for them kind of just being able to get out there, in a real type game in front of the fans and kind of get that first real game experience into this season with a new team, new guys that are going to be involved. I think it was just kind of good to see them get back out there and start playing again.
How big of an adjustment is that going from the practices and scrimmages to that live action like Coach Davis refers to and getting to that game one?
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's really nothing that can compare to, actually playing in front of your home crowd for something that actually matters, which is a real regular season game. Like the late nights, scrimmages, even the exhibition games, they don't even compare to running out of that tunnel and knowing that, okay, if we lose this, it goes on our record. And so I think, adrenaline, just being too hype. I know like for freshmen, I know it's like the first time that you get to really, feel that whole experience. So when you get on the court, you probably are 10 times more tired just because of nerves and everything like that. So I think it's good to, for one, for those guys to be able to get out there and kind of feel that. But then two, just, it feels like a brand new team, to be honest. And we only, you only lost Brady and then added a few freshmen. So it's good to kind of see them get out there and play, for the first time this year.
You mentioned the freshmen, Tyler Nickel, Seth Trimble make their collegiate debuts. What did you see from them in the minutes that they were out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think for freshmen, usually it's you got to find whatever it is, whatever role it is that you're going to play. I think you saw Seth picking up, trying to pressure the basketball, offensively trying to get out in transition, get downhill, and then Tyler. I think it's just a matter of him finding whatever role it is for them. Whether it is defending or spacing the floor, trying to shoot the ball or whatever. I think he just has to kind of find that role in that niche to hopefully be able to provide some sort of minutes off the bench for the team. But, they didn't play like they were afraid. They didn't play like they were nervous. They went out there and played hard. And so I think that was a good sign for sure.
Can you put us in their shoes? What were your emotions like playing in your first game at the collegiate level?
It's different. You come from high school and a lot of times you're the best player by far on your team and usually in the whole, your state and maybe even in the country. And so you go in there with these expectations of yourself and other people putting expectations of what you should be doing to help the team or what you should be putting out there. And, it's just, it's different. You have to kind of, like I said, with those two guys, you have to find what your niche is. You have to find what it is that the team needs you to do, because they don't need you to go out there and get 30 again, like you had to in high school. So it's just a matter of finding what it is that'll help you stay on the court. And so obviously the first game, everybody can say that they're not nervous, but you're always nervous when you first go out there in your first game. Adrenaline is going crazy, especially once the music starts before the game, starting lineups. So it's just a matter of staying calm, obviously believing in yourself and playing how you can play, but then finding what it is that, now Coach Davis, wants you to do to try to stay on the court.
Carolina had the usual suspects leading the way for this team to the win. Caleb Love, R.J. Davis were the leading scorers with 17. Armando Bacot with 16. Leaky Black chips in with 7. Great defense on just a great two-way player for this Carolina team. I was really impressed with R.J. Davis. I thought he looked really under control. He was rejecting a lot of ball screens. He has great touch around the basket. He looks like he could be a first team all ACC player this year. With that core of guys that came back, did anybody stand out or any of their play stick out to you?
No, I mean, I think everybody basically did what we know they can do. You know, like you said, RJ was pretty steady at the point, kind of getting everybody in the spots they needed to be, being aggressive when we need to be aggressive. Obviously, Caleb, we know how explosive he can be when it comes to offensively. Um, kind of filling up the stat sheet. And then Armando is just he is who he is, right? Like he's going to dominate. He's a huge body in there. He's going to dominate on the glass. Anything around the rim, that's his. So I think it was good to see that. I think the biggest thing, and I was just talking to actually Kenny not too long ago, was about Pete Nance, right? And filling that role of Brady. I think it's like a give or take. Obviously, Brady was an unbelievable, offensive threat for the team last year. And at times defensively was kind of, that was the matchup that other teams wanted to go at. I think now this year it's more of the flip, right? Like when Pete's out there on the court defensively, there's really no holes, defensively. But then offensively, it's kind of where we're going to find that shooting that Brady brought to the team last year. So I think that is the one spot for me when I watch the game that I think over time we'll have to kind of watch and see where is this, outside shooting going to come from. But I love their the defensive end of the floor. I see them, calling 14 or 15, which, for those that don't know, it's basically switching 1 through 4, switching 1 through 5. And so having kind of those lineups out there where Pete Nance is maybe at the 5 and you can switch everything, I think totally changes the look of how they play defense. So I think that's one thing to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, the defensive potential for this team is off the charts. Wilmington only scored 21 points at halftime. They shoot under 30% for the entire game. I love the point you made about Pete Nance and how it's almost the reverse of Brady Manick last year. I didn't even really think about that, but I thought that was something that kind of stuck out to me. Nance's ability to play the 5, to give Mondo breaks, or if Mondo gets in foul trouble, he moves well out on the perimeter. You'd like to see him open up things more offensively for the team, but it's game 1, so it's really early to be pressing the panic button with this offense. And you have Caleb Love, you have RJ Davis, you have Armando. Points are going to be easy to come by if this defense can kind of establish this team on that end. I think that would be massive for this Carolina team. But offensively, Wilmington threw a ton of different looks at Carolina that were disrupting the timing of the offense, picking up 94 feet with pressure, half court pressure, full court pressure. What did you see from Wilmington that maybe kind of disrupted the timing of the UNC offense?
Yeah, I mean it's tough when you play against a team that is so aggressive defensively. I mean, it was from the jump, like we're picking you up 94 feet, whether we miss or make, like we're doing that. So if you never really went against that in practice, if North Carolina doesn't run it themselves as far as, full court press or whatever, then you're probably not going to go against it in practice very much, especially before the first game of the year. So I think they did a decent job of kind of playing against that. Obviously, you had some turnovers here and there, things like that against that pressure, but it's tough to simulate another team's pressure like that if you don't do it, yourselves. But I think offensively for me, when I kind of look at the stats, they had 4 assists the whole game, which I think for me, obviously it's a little skewed because they do a bunch of pick and roll now. They do a bunch of dribble handoffs. Their offense is just a little bit different. So it kind of consists of more dribble drives and that kind of stuff. But I think that's one thing that they'll definitely need to pay attention to, because 4 assists, I mean, that's basically you're not passing the ball to score at all. So I think that's one thing that kind of, I wasn't fully expecting, but like you said, it's the first game, right? It's the first game against a team that plays a little bit different than probably teams that they'll play, going forward. So, I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah, that was one of the things I made a note where I'm looking to see this team improve the most. They had 9 turnovers to those 4 assists, and the room for error goes down when you're getting into your sets 15 seconds into the shot clock. So I think Wilmington did a good job of kind of pressuring North Carolina, and it's something that if they show that they struggle against it on Wilmington, you're probably going to see it more as the year goes on. It's kind of like a copycat league where wherever works for one team, another team is going to try it until you show you can stop it. And I thought another way that Wilmington had some success was trying to put Mondo in ball screens and attacking him when he's playing that deep drop. We saw teams go to that with success last year. Is there anything Carolina can do to try to counter that action? Or is it something that you have to live with when you do have Mondo at the 5 with what you're getting from him on the offensive end too?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of something that I saw as well. I feel like every single play ended with a ball screen with Mondo being in it. And I want to give him credit because he did a pretty good job in that first game against that pick and roll. I think with somebody like him, you have to live with it. I think in college it helps a little bit more because you can pack the paint a little bit more. You can help and shift a little bit more. But with how big Mondo is, I think he always just has to stay aware of obviously the roller, but just go and contest everything at the rim. You don't want to get dragged out too much. You don't want to try to, put too much pressure on the guard because then that's whenever you get into foul trouble as a big. But like I said, I mean, I think he did a great job, in my opinion, in the first game. If he can continue to get better at that and they can kind of shift, whether it's off of the guys that they know can't really shoot or they just shift in more when they see a pick and roll. I think that's really the only thing you can do because you have to have Mondo on the court. Like offensively, he's unstoppable almost down there. So you have to have him on the floor. I think it's just making small adjustments, but Mondo's seen it, like you said, even last year they attacked him the same thing. So he's seen it now going on 2 years. And so if he can learn from kind of his mistakes in the past, I think he'll just keep getting better at it.
Yeah, it's funny that you're on this podcast and on the Celtics now because I think I watch a lot of like breakdown videos, and I think I was watching the Celtics doing like pre-switching. So they couldn't get some of the Celtics bigs in those scenarios. So that could be something also that Carolina can turn to. And it's kind of the best part about basketball, the counters and seeing how coaches kind of go at things differently. I also love the early season games because you see coaches trying out different lineups. Like the end of last year, it was the Iron Five and the Iron Five for every game, essentially. At the end of the first half, we saw a small ball lineup. I don't know if anybody had this on their bingo card. It was Seth Trimble, R.J. Davis, DeMarco Dunn, Caleb Love at the 4, Pete Nance at the 5. What do you think about going with those lineups and these early season games where coaches can tinker around and try to see what works and what doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're not going to see Caleb Love at the 4 very often. But I think one thing that I have to give Coach Davis credit to is he said going into this year that he's with the people on the bench, he's going based off of their practices leading up to the games, right? And so when you look at, Dunn, for example, he said he stacked a lot of good practices leading up, and so you give him some sort of opportunity. Obviously, you have to give Seth some sort of opportunity as a freshman, see what he can do, against college level players. And then, you kind of tinker with some things. But I think with all of those guys, I think the biggest thing for me is having Pete Nance be able to play the 5, right? Like give Mondo some sort of break to be able to go out for a little bit. I know he probably would love to play 40 minutes, but to give him some sort of break so that he can come back in and be just as dominant as when the game starts. So it is an interesting lineup, having basically a 6'3" 3-man and a 6'4", 6'5" 4-man.
They got 2 stops defensively.
Like you said,
only 2 possessions. They got 2 stops.
You might as well tinker with some things before the games really start heating up. So Coach Davis, he knows what he's doing. So I'll let him do it.
Yeah, one of those 2 stops was a shot clock violation because they just kept running those handoff actions, and Carolina was just able to switch everything when you're 1 through 4 is 6'2" and shorter. And the other point I thought you mentioned that was worth repeating. Coach Davis, above any coach, I think, isn't playing anybody who hasn't earned the minutes. So when you hear somebody like DeMarco stacking good practices, you really shouldn't be surprised when he's out there playing. I thought one area of concern for Carolina was the lack of bench scoring. They scored 6 points as a bench. Where do you think bench scoring could come from, and how much would somebody like Puff Johnson being available help that bench unit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, you saw how Puff played in the national championship game, and we know what he can kind of bring offensively as far as shooting and things like that. So that's probably one of the biggest things is just getting him healthy and being able to have him come off that bench. But it's also tough because bench scoring it's always skewed if you don't have guys coming off the bench and playing consistent minutes, right? Like you look at the stats, it's like Tyler played 6 minutes, Styles played 3, and then it was like 14 and 15 for Seth and DeMarco. So it's always a little skewed when it comes to that. But I think they have to find somebody. Like you said, the Iron Five last year, they just ran out of gas, at the end of the year in that championship game. So you have to find somebody that can provide some sort of minutes, give some sort of offensive and defensive productivity going into games, just to give them some sort of a load off. So, it's tough to kind of gauge that based off the first game with Puff being hurt and that kind of thing, and Coach Davis trying to tinker with the lineups. But I think that's probably one of their biggest, keys to this year is trying to find somebody that can provide something off the bench. So it's not all just on that starting 5.
Yeah, it's a lot to ask for, I think, with how good this North Carolina team is. But, a Lou Will off the bench, a Jordan Clarkson type option off the bench, somebody who could be like instant offense for Carolina would be huge. But I also think as the season kind of goes on, you're going to see more minutes for RJ Davis and Caleb Love, where, you're really not going to have somebody's opportunity there to be playing and getting in that rhythm of the offense, unless somebody like Seth Trimble can kind of take that spot and run with it. But an area I know that Coach Davis won't be happy about, Carolina out rebounded by Wilmington 37-32. Should we be reading into that, or is this just a one-off, or is there something to be concerned about there?
I don't think there's really anything to be concerned about it. I mean, we have Mondo's down low. He's going to get his 10 to 12. Pete Nance is going to give us, however many he's going to give us. I think, honestly, at times I would say that the, UNC Wilmington, they just had a little more fire to them in that first game. So at times the ball is going to bounce your way a little bit more. You're going to, outwork somebody a few more times when you play like UNC Wilmington did, which all credit to them. They went in there and fought and played as hard as they could. So I don't think it's anything to really look at. Now, if it was, 45-32, then I think it's kind of like, okay, they're outworking us. But, it's the first game. Guys probably were a little more tired than they thought they would be. And, guys beat them to some loose balls and rebounds. So they clean that up a little bit, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the total rebounds, Wilmington only out rebounds them by 5, but the offensive rebounds, Wilmington had 16 to Carolina's 7. So that's something that Coach Davis is going to key on in the practices leading up to Friday's game. But Carolina back in action against Charleston in the Dean Dome on Friday. I wasn't at the Dean Dome on Monday. It sounded loud on TV. I've heard others say how good the crowd was for an early season non-conference game, which makes sense when you're the preseason #1. So you'd hope that continues. But appreciate everybody listening. Justin, appreciate the time and looking forward to next week.
I appreciate it, man.